Hi, I'm Josh Cadillac, and welcome to my podcast, Know Your Shit. I've been blessed to see great success, as well as seeing the bottom up close and personal in 2008. And if there's one lesson I've learned, is that if you want to have success and differentiate yourself from everyone else out there, you need to know your shit. As a successful real estate and crypto investor and an educator, it drives me insane that people do not immerse themselves in their craft. Everyone is so busy advertising and testing new sales techniques, they forget the most important thing, the product. Here I want to talk to the folks that got this right, the most successful people in the world in every industry. Bring them to you and find out what they learned in their business that made it great. When you listen to my podcast, you will know for sure that the topics and experts we have on have one thing in common. They know their shit. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Know Your Shit podcast, where our knowledge and pride in what we do drives us to be excellent. My name is Josh Cadillac. I'll be in the driver's seat for today's show as we strive to learn how to stop doing deals and start closing for life. We've got a great show for you and a great guest. Mr. Jay Perez is joining us today. Hey, Jay, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing great, Mr. Cadillac. Thank you for having me on.
Jay, so why don't you tell everybody what it is you do?
So I am a basically a mortgage professional. I've been in the mortgage world for a little over a decade, and I am currently an area vice president for Americasa, where I basically focus on the business side of recruiting, developing talent, and business development for our team.
Good stuff. What got you started doing that, Jay?
Oh man, so my mortgage career started actually probably a couple decades ago when I wanted to get into real estate. So funny thing is, I never wanted to be a mortgage professional. Always wanted to be a real estate professional. But I went, started at 20 years old, went to real estate and mortgage school, and I felt that I was still too young, not old enough, not mature enough. This was, this was an adult world, and I didn't have a mentor or anything like that. So couple years ago, a couple years later in 2005, I ended up getting in for a company called Americasa, which was a bigger refinance shop. So I got an opportunity there, worked there for about 6 months before that went belly up, and jumped into the broker world, the mortgage broker world, for about another year and a half until that went belly up, and got out of it. And about 3 years later in 2011, gave it, really the last go, and connected with an old buddy of mine, and just started getting back into it, and finally timed it, got the right time to get in, and from there just put my head down and worked hard, and here I am 10 years later.
The stars aligned, if you will. So Jay, where did all the success come from for you?
Failures, man. It's the failures. It's learning. Every step of my journey, I felt was a learning lesson, an opportunity to learn something. So, I realized I had to learn just how to be an adult, how to mature the first time around. When I came back in 2005, I was much more of an adult. I just did it more for the money, I would say, right? So I think then it was just, failing was focused on the wrong things. And then after that, the journey of, met my wife, became a father. All of those things helped me understand my client a lot better. And then once I think I aligned my heart and my head and just put my priorities in place, that's it. After that, it was just get back in, and it was a tough journey. I didn't have anyone that opened any doors. My joke is I broke in through a back window and got in the room, and stayed here ever since.
Sure, you had to fight your way in, and then once you got in, you weren't getting back out, and that's tenacity. It's important. So what do you like best about what you do, Jay?
And there's so much. It's not one thing particularly. It's a combination. If you really want to sum it up, it is helping people, which sounds cliche, but once you've had some successes and you kind of mark off a lot of your personal goals, whether it's, call it material goals, getting a house, or, some kind of toy or vacations, you kind of look at what's next. And for me, what's next has always been just continuing to help, thrive on helping people. So it's a combination of helping individuals, grow their career. I've done that quite a few times, and it's very fulfilling to see somebody go from, not even knowing how to spell the word mortgage to having a very successful career in mortgages, to helping from the beginning, a client, being a homeowner was one thing, and helping somebody achieve home ownership. But I think one of my greatest successes was having my very first client that I, consulted, structured him. She was a young lady, had a husband at the time that she was going to school. He was, working two jobs as a landscaper, basically working for maintenance at a school and doing side landscape jobs. She was going to school. They were very frugal. They ended up, buying their first home. She ended up graduating, got a pretty good job as a data analyst, making, pretty close to six figures. Then from there, they stayed very frugal. They bought a second home, then bought a third, a fourth, a fifth. So I remember one day I bumped into her into a hallway. She was in my office, it was like at a medical office, and we bumped in the hallway. And, she said, Jay, the one thing I've been able to do is my husband doesn't have to go work out in the sun anymore. We can maintain our life based off the investments we made. And, she thanked me for that. And I think that was probably from a sales standpoint, working with the clients, that probably was my highlight of my career, meaning it took years to get there, but it all started with, giving her the time when she didn't qualify for a mortgage, and being patient and giving them the advice and staying with them. And, they were very nervous throughout the process, but sticking with them and seeing them, then be able to multiply that into be able to have some financial freedom. And, I think that on a personal level really felt, something that you had no idea you were going to hear that, when we started, and to hear that was pretty cool.
So you mean that you don't just work with customers that come to you ready, willing, and able to perform immediately? That's crazy. These buyers that aren't ready and all this kind of stuff. This concept that you need to take and meet people where they are and turn them from where they are into somebody that can perform is part of the job that most agents look at it some sort of a negative, both on the real estate side and the mortgage side, like, oh, they're not ready to go, and the thing is, when they are ready to go, I want to be there for them when they are ready to go. And I want to be part of the process to get them from where they are to where they want to be. And that's always something that I know that you and I have shared, is this idea of, well, just because we're here doesn't mean we can't get where we need to get to. Let's put a plan in place and get you there. And I think it's such an important part of this business.
Well, I have a funny follow-up, the opposite of that story.
Okay.
So I got a text message from a client that says, hey, I don't know if you still have my number saved. You guys, help me out. And my wife has a real estate license, and, your wife you guys have showed us some houses, and we never ended up buying, and, want to know if right now is a good time to buy. So this was back in 2015. I first met this gentleman. He was referred from a personal friend of mine. And he was always a naysayer. No, the market, this is just crazy. This is going to crash. This is going to crash. And he was the guy that listened to either the articles or his buddies. And I'm like, I would always advise against it. And, fast forward 15, and we re-engaged, I think in 18. And I remember he got really serious of making offers at the time, made an offer, was $3,000 away from getting the offer for a house that's probably worth about $650,000 now. At the time was offering $378,000. He's still in the same place. And I told him, it was bittersweet to hear from you this weekend. A part of me, obviously I'm happy to hear from you, but what I was hoping was to hear is, hey, by the way, I didn't buy with you. I bought with somebody else. And I'm just calling you for, I wanted to hear that you didn't buy with me. You were able to buy a house because, we know you missed the boat. You missed the boat. I know you missed the boat. It was a tough conversation I had with him, but at the same time was a very real. And he's like, I know what you mean. And, I told him, listen, at this point, you got to start listening to the professionals. Is it the best time to buy right now? I told him it depends on the deal. There could be cases where I'm going to tell you, no, right now is not a good time to buy. When back then I was telling you everything was a good time to buy. So yeah, I spoke to him for a little bit, but we kind of reconnected in a way where it's the opposite of that first story, right? It's the guy that didn't take the advice, the guy that you did help, but just heard the advice from others and ended up, kind of missing the train at that point. Not even the boat, missed the train,
Yeah. No. It's there's so many people that know better. The fact that agents don't do a good job of making the case for themselves that they are the real estate professional in the room, that they don't do a good job of showing so much credibility that the customer stops listening to all the other noise and listens to them. Because if you're not making that case that, hey, look, you're an amateur coming into my space. This is the thing I eat, live, breathe, and sleep. And so I know that you maybe have heard stuff that you like or whatever, but getting this right is how I eat. And I'm not the kind of person that's going to tell you to do something that's not going to be good for you. I'd rather tell you no and not make money than tell you yes and have you lose money. If you can establish yourself in the customer's mind, that's somebody that's looking out for them and somebody that knows what the hell they're talking about. It's first and most important battle you got to win so that this customer wants to move forward based upon what you say, that you have some credibility in that conversation. And agents don't do the missionary work on both sides. On the mortgage side, mortgage guys, actually, you guys have a lot of technical stuff that you do that tends to build that credibility. The customer's like, eyes wide open. Oh, okay. Yeah, whatever you say. On the real estate side, the customer comes to us thinking they know this process better than us because they've got Zillow and they've watched a half episode of something on HGTV, and so of course they're real estate professionals. But taking the time to establish that, hey, look, your knowledge is down here, mine is up here. I'm not beating you over the head with the fact that I know more than you. I should know more than you. This is what I do for a living. You shouldn't know as much as me. You came to me because you don't know how to do this thing. Relieving them of that misconception, of that split idea in their mind that they know best, is one of the best and most important things as an agent you can do to help them, keep them from making the kind of mistakes that you're talking about.
Do you know what I attribute that to is the fact that everyone has lived in the house their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
They feel that they see it, they touch it. So there's a sense of, I know houses. And at the end of the day, you're going to talk about commission breath and the pushy salespeople, like when you go to the store and say, oh, can I help you? The first thing you say is, no, you can't help me. Even though you are there to look for something, you do need help, but you're just not ready to ask for questions. So it's I think a psychology for defense for them wanting to kind of take the seat. And, you're going to have different personalities. You're going to have the ones that are going to sit down and say, hey, I know nothing. I trust you 100%. But then you're going to have the ones that are going to feel like, you're constantly looking for the commission. So, going within that, it's not just establishing the fact that, hey, you're the, you should be the smartest person in the room at that moment with them. It's that your goal isn't to necessarily, shove a house down their throat to make a commission. And with that same gentleman, funny enough, I use the example of, I had a realtor that used to bring me business that used to make me feel uncomfortable because I feel like he used to shove houses down people's throat. I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you before.
Yeah.
And I would feel like he would try to, I would say, look, this is what they could afford. But he's like, I don't care what they can afford. What can they qualify for? And I'm like, well, that's a different number. He's like, leave it to me. And it made me feel uncomfortable. So I stopped working with him. And, years later, he ends up getting a mortgage license. So a buddy of mine calls, hey, man, work with him. He's grown up from then. I'm like, are you sure? And I sat with him and we were talking. And I realized, his maturity, but he's telling me, hey, remember that client that, that didn't barely qualified for the house and we made work, well, now they have 3 houses. And all his clientele has been the houses that he was able to basically continue to leverage and give him a portfolio where he's established some kind of financial freedom for him and wealth. And I credit to him just having such conviction to the market at the time and just really, a deeper conviction and myself as a mortgage professional, I'm analyzing risk. So I'm constantly looking at risk. So there's a line that I'm like, hey, there's a portion here that I can't afford to move forward because the difference between a realtor and a mortgage professional is the realtor closes and he's pretty much, on a technical aspect, he's done with that transaction. Well, we don't get paid to close. We get paid to sell a performing loan to the secondary market.
Right.
Well, that loan has to perform, that loan has to stay active, and that loan has to get audited throughout the process. So if you stop performing, the loan stops performing, well, the odds of getting audited are much higher, and then they're going to try to look for something, right? Because they want to get that off their balance book. So it's really important that you're able to deliver a loan that that the person could afford, and anything can happen after homes break. Man, I remember, some horror stories on my personal home, my water heater breaking, my well going out, and like, man, it's like Murphy's Law, what can go wrong will go wrong. So there's always that sense of making sure that we protect our borrowers to a certain extent. But I had to apologize to him. I said, look, you had such conviction at the time that I felt uncomfortable, but I realized you were right. And it's, I had to apologize. And it was the start of actually him turning into one of my top producers. And, and we have a great relationship now.
Well, I mean, it's definitely that different aspect of the business that you look at. It's kind of like when you talk to an attorney about doing any kind of a business deal. They're always thinking that it's going to just take and something horrible. Like attorneys will talk you into doing every business. If you waited for your attorney to say something was okay to do, nothing would ever get done, because all the attorney ever sees is stuff that gets screwed up and goes sideways. Like nobody comes to the attorney and like, I just want to tell you how fantastic that deal worked out that we just did. The only time they come to the attorney is like, I need to sue this guy. So from their perspective, they're overexposed to this risk side. And from your side, I mean, the pressure is all on to make sure that, you know, you're looking out for the risk. On the real estate side, they're always looking out for they should be looking out for the opportunity. I mean, obviously with a serious eye to risk, because, you know, if the market does turn against people, you need to be aware of that. Having an understanding of the history of the real estate market and how it behaves, and knowing that it doesn't move in downward trends for long periods of time in a major way, it's part of it. You know, making sure those loans don't become disincentivized. It's even now they're talking about, oh, there's these homes that are now upside down that these people are going to, you know, and I'm saying that at the same time I'm having a bidding war we had 10 offers in this last house that we just did. And I'm saying, you know, it sounds like somebody else is weighing in here. That's not actually quite as active a part of the market. I don't know. And so it does make for interesting times. But
and you might find some markets that are going to be off right now, and you might,
sure,
you know, just because particularly the last few years has been abnormal, right? To historical, you know, it's definitely been, you know, and what it is normal to previous trends where there's been, you know, either some kind of correction or collapse later on, but, you know, depending on the market you're going to be in, and it really is dependent, you know, and that's 100% like what we talked about with that previous client, that he's listening to the wrong people. You know, it's who are you listening to, and it's, you know, there's a country song from Chris Stapleton, who are you listening to, right? Which I kind of always think about when we have that conversation, because you want to make sure that it's good to get different opinions, but
sure,
the person, you have to value the person who you're getting the opinion from and their experience and what have they done. Are they, you know, are they novice in this, or are they somebody that just has done it? They don't have to be a professional. But, you know, you can go, let's say, to let's say your grandfather. Your grandfather could have always made the right decision, but he's not up to speed with today's
what's
market.
going
So
on today.
he's going to look at it from his perspective, not your perspective.
Sure. Well, I mean, I can tell you this, right? Because I like to get to the real economic factors. I'm all about what the real numbers are. So as you know, I speak all over the country, and I always ask one question. Guys, do we have enough homes right now to meet the existing number of ready, willing, and able buyer folks that are approved that can buy? Do we have enough homes to meet that demand? I have not gone one place yet, Jay, where they've said we have enough homes.
Basic supply and demand.
We are
It comes down to that.
undersupplied. So if you're going to tell me that prices are going to go down in a market that's currently undersupplied, we have more buyers than we have homes. I find economically, I find that hard to justify, because you never really see that. I mean, could it be that the hype and the media maybe makes us go to an oversupply? So maybe, but it seems like interest rates aren't coming down anytime soon in a meaningful way. At least the Federal Reserve's interest rate, they just came out and said, hey, look, we're not going anywhere for a while, guys. So just get used to it. I would think from a buyer standpoint, for those folks that were, you know, sitting here hoping upon hope that those rates were going to come down to the latter half of this year, they got to sit here and say, well, I guess we got to suck it up, buttercup, and do something, because God knows rents aren't letting up on us anytime soon.
And that's the other aspect. It's, you know, what's your other option, right? If you're living at home and you're not paying a mortgage, then okay, fine. You might have some opportunity to hold out and be more opportunistic. But if the simple fact is the money's going out, again, what are your options? And what you're saying about you know, the supply and demand, and, you know, the factor that it's still not enough homes. If you look back at 2000 and some of the, you know, facts from 2007 and 8, in that period where we did have, where we're going to say, okay, well, the only other time in history in the last, you know, 30, 40 years we can compare is that one, you know, moment. Well, at that time, we go back to supply and demand. We had 4 million homes available right at the beginning of the recession. Well, right now we're at 1 million homes available. The demand factor was, we had the highest percentage of home ownership in American history at that time. We're not in that position right now. And the third factor was the incoming class of first-time home buyers. So the average age of the first-time home buyer is 33 years old. The incoming class of first-time home buyers the birth rates had dropped off significantly, and the reason is attributed to 1974. They passed Roe versus Wade. 33 years before, we were at a perfect time where you had this credit bubble, an oversupply, and you just pretty much took out the demand. And that was the needle that popped the actual bubble of 2007. Well, fast forward, we have the highest amount of birth rates since that period. It's, I think, about 3 million, more than we did back then. I think it was 12 million at that point. And then the migration issue that's still, the immigration issue that's still coming in, where you're having a ton of immigration. So when you're looking at demand, it's not going to get easier. We still have the birth rates that are still coming up. Now we are going to plateau on birth rates and start going down.
Sure.
But I believe that's where immigration is going to offset that. What's coming in is going to offset. So the ones that are coming in now, this rush that we're going to get are going to be the buyers that are going to be ready in 3 to 5 years, which is going to offset that. So I don't see it getting much better in between materials and supply chains and cost and inflation. Where builders aren't going to go crazy on building. They're still going to, be a little bit, like they've been for the last 10 years. They're going to be a little cautious. So I still think that we're going to be in a very solid market, coming forward. I don't think it's going to have any kind of flaps. I think we're going to be the ones that get through this recession, that hold steady and are the ones that are going to get the recession to the other side.
I think that we're actually going to experience pretty solid appreciation through this recession, because I mean, even at a 6.5% inflation rate right now, that's still more than double what we've pretty much experienced in the last 40 years. And so, that right there means the value of money is going down that fast. And as I say to people all the time, what makes you think that a gallon of milk is going to cost more, and a car is going to cost more, and eggs are going to cost, everything's going to cost more except houses? How does that make sense? The value of money is going down. The need for shelter has not diminished. Nothing has diminished the need for shelter. And so the value of that shelter, if it's represented in less valuable money, you're going to have to give people more of that less valuable money in order to get the same shelter that you did previously. And so, the run up, the speed with which the run up occurred was definitely exacerbated by very low interest rates. The post-COVID interest rates. So there's a bit of a perfect storm, and expecting there maybe to be some pullback isn't unreasonable. But I mean, last numbers I saw, we were up year to date 15%.
Yeah.
So
the number I'd be weary of right now, and the number to keep an eye on, is the debt, the consumer debt. I think we just reached the peak. So so we're sitting at a point where we're sitting on the highest amount of equity. Just education, that the consumer is so much more educated than ever before. So we have the highest point of equity in probably American history, or pretty close to it, and definitely in the last, I don't know how
since
many
the
years.
Secondary market came to be. Yeah,
basically, right, since they've, I think, been tracking it. So you have the highest amount of equity, and then now the highest amount of debt we've had in pretty long time. So that right there are pinnacle points where people are going to start, if we start losing jobs and the money continues to dry up, the money supply, and the debt continues to rise, then again, opportunity is going to happen. People are going to have to sell their houses. People are going to have to. So I think we're going to end up being in the most opportunistic time of real estate. I mean, outside of the part of that window of 2010, 11, and 12, 13, where literally, I was telling people, you're getting free. Basically, whatever you see now, it's like buying Apple at like, $50 a stock when Apple was like at 300. I'm like, guys, it's you buy as much as you can. You're not going to go wrong. It's as safe as you're going to get. Or I think you're going to get a lot of opportunity, because people are going to, get into debt. They're going to start drying up, and they're going to have to get out of homes because they're sitting on equity. You're going to see the opportunities come, and they're going to be able, and that's going to definitely give. So if you're not 100% in the market, or you've been wary, again, it's understanding what to look for and making sure you are with a professional that can get there. And if you're that professional, that's what you got to be driving, and be patient. I say right now, the transaction is not as important as the client. Where in the last 2 years during COVID, if you had a client, you were showing them 30 houses to maybe get an offer accepted, that the house was more important at that point. That like you had 5 clients. If that client didn't take that offer and it didn't happen, chances are they might not be able to buy. So now you have to really, really, really value your client and be able to say no to transaction. No, this house doesn't make sense. We'll be patient. We'll find something better. And you're going to have to work at that. I think that's the same way that lenders are going to have to work at getting better rates. realtors are going to have to work on driving better deals for their clients, whether it's getting credits or a combination of credits and negotiating price points. But the opportunities will be out there coming up, especially in the next 12 months.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And understanding that is the big difference. The big difference between 2008, the reason why this is not another 2008 is exactly that statistic that you had. The tremendous amount of equity that people have in these properties. They are disincentivized from walking away from their properties and creating this downward spiral of exacerbating a supply situation or creating and then exacerbating an oversupply. We don't have us. Everybody is incentivized right now, incredibly incentivized to stay in their home because everybody's in there at a 2.5 to 3.5% interest rate at this point. Why the hell are they going to, where are they going to go? The only cheaper option is mom's basement. And in Florida, we don't have basements.
No basements. So we had efficiency.
We have illegally converted garages. That we have a lot.
And now they're going to be moving the ADU down here for Miami-Dade. So if they prove that you can get legal ADUs, and efficiencies become a thing, you can actually use them to qualify for a home. So actually I'm doing one on a house right now that had a legal ADU.
Oh, good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So Jay, what do you think makes you good at what you do, man?
It's a combination of things, I would say. The energy that I bring on a daily basis, I think is definitely a factor. I wake up every day with purpose. So, so my passion, I think is a big thing. I think my failures, again, is just drives me to value everything that I have, right? So there's a grateful for every step and every accomplishment I've had in my career. It's I look at the journey. So I'm in love with the journey, right? So let's say you're being a bodybuilder, you got to be in love with the grind, right? So it's really the thing that, yeah, man. My wife is, if my wife goes out of town, she's not worried about me doing anything but working a lot more, right? That's what she's, if she knows I'm going to dive into work. So it's just loving it, and I love it in so many different aspects. So it's not just one thing as well. So I found my passion, and I think that's important. Not everyone's going to love it the same way. Not everyone's going to have the same passion. But I just understand that there's a purpose for every day. And I think that's probably it, outside of any kind of technical, whether it's I understand something at a certain level, it's just really that, man, my passion.
All right. So Jay, what do you think is the most important thing you've learned in the process of doing what you do?
First, humility is one thing. I would say if I'm speaking to not only myself, but to others, that, it's there comes a point where everyone is gonna achieve some success, but then it's gonna get to their head, right? So this too shall pass. I think we had mentioned that, right? So when things go bad, this too shall pass. When things go good, this too shall pass, right? Yep. It's just understanding that it's not going to be a straight line up. It's not going to be how you plan it. There's going to be setbacks. So I think that's one of the things, it's just understanding. And then I've set some lofty goals for myself. So I'm an ambitious person. So with that said, I've just, but also understood it's going to be a day at a time, right? So it's not trying to get there too fast either. It's just understanding that it's going to be a road to get there. And again, that goes back to falling in love with the journey, where, at this stage, 10 years or, I'll say the last decade, 2011 till now, when I really came in over the last, 10, 11 years, I wasn't worried about running the fastest. I was just worried about being able to continuously take steps and continuously get a little faster and a little bit better. So I've been patiently, sticking to a plan, created a plan, and just stuck to it.
All right, good stuff. So Jay, what are you most proud about that you've done in business?
I think so. A couple of years ago, we were able to take a trip. So in my previous company, they had a president's cabinet. Most companies will have some kind of, either president's club or cabinet. So as a salesperson, one of my goals was always to be, when I came to this company, I wanted to be one of the top salespeople, and at most respected offices, or in the market, right? So I accomplished that, but I never made president's cabinet. I was always just shy of it. And I remember they used to kind of like, hey, let's try to put some loans under your name. I was like, no, if I don't make it under my own name, I don't want to be there, right? when I ended up becoming a branch manager and opening up my own office, I was able to make it there as a manager. So that at that moment became my most my proudest moment, just because it was through helping people, but I still was originating and whatnot. The next year was the year of COVID 2020. And we ended up making it where I didn't originate, and I made it basically by building the team and my team members that have been with me pretty much from when I originated, that were my assistants, that became the originators, that now were able to become top salespeople in their market, were there with me. So I think that was pretty much the highlight of my career, where, when I look at the last 10 years, I'll say that's the moment that all the work went in, because I was able to enjoy it not just by myself, but with the people that were on the journey with me, the wives. And I remember I think the ride from the airport to the hotel, I think we knocked down like 2 bottles of tequila, 8 of us, of 1942. And it was a legendary story that we could still laugh about today. And there was, definitely loss of memory that night. And we missed the dinner, but it was just a culmination of years of hard work where, it's a story, so, and it was years of hard work where we felt that we just got to let it out all at once. And that definitely was the pinnacle. I think that was the mountaintop for me, at least in that stage, right, over the last 10 years, just because it took all that failure, all that to get to there. So now I think I'm working on my next 10 years, so to speak, right?
The next
I
mountaintop.
kind of closed that chapter out, and now I'm working on the next chapter.
As a good friend of mine used to say, next.
Yeah.
That's it. So how about in life, Jay? What are you most proud of that you've accomplished in life?
Oh, that's an easy one. So when I met my wife in 2007, she had kids from a previous marriage, so we're 5 and 7. And I think when I look at and that's definitely my biggest accomplishment is, 16 years later, we're happily married. We have our third child. We had our child together, and those and my son and my daughter, because I have always called them my son and my daughter, are both in college. They're both, adults, functioning adults. They're, my son's up in Gainesville. He's gone away for college, and he's turning into a man. And my daughter's down here in Miami, but she is successfully becoming a teacher. She's, got a career already in front of her. And I think that's probably the biggest success there, is just being able to take on such a challenge. And then be able to stick with it. And, obviously far from easy, but, to be able to sit back and know that that mission is accomplished. Those two, that task I took on are now functioning adults, and I know that they're going to be okay. And that's a big part.
Good stuff. So if you had to give one piece of advice to our listeners, what would it be, Jay?
Know thyself is the first thing that comes to mind. It's know your strengths, know your weaknesses. I think that's part of it. It's not everyone is gonna be, either the best at one thing or, the best salesperson. It's just, find what's, yourself and what drives you and what makes you happy. By doing so, I think everything gets easier along the way. And the next thing that I would probably give them is, create a plan and stick with it. It really is that. But the plan has to be aligned with yourself and what you like and what you dislike. And, if you don't like people, then that particular role of sales might not be the best thing for you. Maybe being an appraiser might be it, right? But you might need to understand and get your foot in the door. So understand yourself the best way, and that's probably the biggest thing.
Sure. Push yourself, figure out what you can and can't do, and then take and adjust your plan based upon that. Figure out what you're here to do and do it well. A big fan of that. And always call yourself on your bullshit.
Yeah.
Always an important part.
Have definitely learned that. And I think that's really it. It's just, once you learn how to call your own bullshit, you see when people are bullshitting themselves a lot easier,
Yeah.
And it becomes definitely a skill set you start learning,
Yeah, it's an important thing. So Jay, a little bit of a change here, but more along the lines of advice. What one book or movie would you recommend to people listening? If you were going to say, hey, this one really helped a lot.
So there's a couple go-to, if you don't mind. I like to, depending on where you're at, right? So I think one of the books that definitely, if you're a person that just wants to understand sales in general, The Greatest Salesman in the World. I think that's a good one. It's a short, it's a story. It's the principles in it are just the basic 10 principles that you're gonna need for success in a sales career. I think that's a big one. But if you're really a person that needs to help find yourself, then You Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins is another one that's great, because again, it's really about calling your own bullshit, and that's really the one about that will help you understand. It's gonna be a little rough, but it definitely
Oh,
will
yeah.
understand that you're full of shit, and you got to
Yeah,
call
yeah.
yourself out of it. Yeah.
Goggins does not play around.
Yeah, it does not. So I'm an audiobook guy. So, it's when you actually
Guilty
hear
here.
Goggins, you hear him telling you, because he's reading the book, as well. So it's actually not him. He has a guy reading it, his co-author, but he'll step in like a podcast and they'll talk
Yep.
about the chapter. So then he'll recap it and stuff like that. But that's a good one.
That last podcast piece at the end is absolutely my favorite of that book. It's a great book. Great book. I actually got a new one that just came out. So
yeah, all right, I got to catch on that one. Yeah, he's definitely that one sticks, and it's tough because a lot of people don't stick to it. They'll hear it and it'll be a little rough, but you got to stick with it. It'll get to the other side, and it'll really allow for you to, a lot of times, we're all going to have our story and our excuses and our victim, mentality or whatnot for our own story, and it really just, it goes back to it at the end of the day. No matter what, somebody had it worse.
absolutely.
So yeah, and you just got to accept it. So whatever you have, take your cards and move forward. I think I haven't had the worst. I definitely, for myself, I don't think I ever really was like, so much definitely full of shit, right? We know that, but I definitely never took the victim route. I think that's my energy level has always been, I'm very optimistic, the cup is half full type of personality. But definitely, give myself plenty of excuses, and I can sell myself out of, convince myself why I shouldn't do something. So that's one there that it gives you the skill sets on how to kind of, go through it as well.
Yeah, no victimhood and no participation trophies. If you get rid of those two things, then you get yourself to a place where you can actually make some progress. So what's next for you, Jay? I know you're a guy that's always working on a big idea guy. Always got a lot of ideas going.
Yeah. So a few things going. So particularly working on the Len 10, which is
I was gonna ask, what are we looking at for a date on Len 10?
Yeah. So I actually started shooting my first little clip. So I've pretty much put on paper what I've could. So particularly the creative aspect of writing a book. It's a combination of a book and it really, the message that I want to get across, my 10 principles for mortgages that I want to get across to my team and to other professionals in it. So over the Christmas break, I was able to pretty much put everything I can on paper. And then from there, wanting to continue to, so I'm a speaker. I'm a guy that once I get going, I start tapping into the stories. And so I already started shooting with my first little video, my first 1 hour of that, we sat down and said, all right, get in front of a camera and go in content creation, I guess you could say, based on the principles. And then from there, we're going to be start, working and continuing that. So my goal this year is to create content, something I haven't done yet. And I know I have a lot of messages to give to people that can be helpful. So that's the biggest thing there. And the second thing is just, growing the brand that I took on and the challenge that I took on with Americasa, which is establishing the community education initiative that we want to do, and which is going to consist of a charity, and I've put all the pieces in place there. So now just making sure I can continue to grow and develop, and today's a big day regarding an opportunity to perfectly position myself for that. So one of the principles for the Len 10 that I like to share to your team is the definition of luck is where preparedness meets opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So you got to work like if you have an idea and you have a dream, just work on it. You don't know when the opportunity is going to come, but something that I started working on 5, 6, 7 years ago actually is something that a lot of people told me, just that's kind of like a corny idea, and little by little I've been sticking to it and putting it together and just kind of building the pieces and shelving them. Now is actually going to start coming to fruition because I kind of never gave up on it, right? Even though it wasn't my primary, vehicle, I still kept it there and I still had it and I would give it thought. So as I continue to think through it and put it together, and then, with the help of Mr. Cadillac here, understanding how to, call my own bullshit out and become my own CEO, right? And stop being my own employee. I've, been able to make some nice headway this year, and then the opportunity has come. So now it's just pretty much about delivering at this point.
Yeah. Oh, good stuff, man. Good stuff. So, Jay, on a personal, bud, what do you do to unwind, man?
Well, I'm in the Keys right now, so this is one of it. So, definitely spend some time out here with my family. So I do have a home out here, so that's a big one. Camping is the other one of my family. Like to camp, so a little bit of boating, camping. Um, After that, man, I don't unwind as much as I should. It's probably one of those things driving an RV allows for you to focus 100% on what you're doing, right?
Mhm.
So, that helps me. Driving a boat, you have to focus 100% on what you're doing. So it's probably the two times that I can really just, focus on something that requires all my attention. But then once you get comfortable, then you go into a deep thought. So then from there, I
Yeah.
get into a nice level of deep thought while I'm there. So those are a couple things that I like to do. But outside of that, man, that's pretty much it. Watch TV. We like watching shows with my wife. We like spending some time together. My daughter's into dancing. So another thing we love to do is watch. She's into competitive dancing. So now the season starts. So we'll end up going, about once or twice a month to watch her dance competitively. So it's always something that we enjoy. That's fun to watch your children, really, do something that they love, that they work very hard for, because she dances 3, 4, 5 hours a day. And she, there's a lot of failures, there's a lot of successes. So that's fun for us as well to watch.
Good stuff. I'm surprised you left grilling meat off of that list of things, because I know how you feel about grilling meat.
Yeah, man, that's definitely an artwork, with me. So definitely I'm a sous vide guy. So I like to sous vide the meat and grill. So it's something that was introduced to me, and during COVID, I really jumped on the concept. My wife is and I'll tell you where it comes from. My wife likes well done meat, right? So I started getting into the Wagyu fat and getting some steaks. And down here they have some pretty cool shops that give you some, really like high end steaks. So it killed me to have to overcook these steaks. And
Yeah.
she likes some hockey puck. That's what I tell the
Yeah.
the
A little
waiters all the
charcoal
time.
briquette.
Yeah, yep. So I was like, how can I create this meat and not ruin it, right? So I learned about sous vide, and it basically is a vacuum seal that you water bathe the steaks. It keeps all the juices inside, and you can customize your water temperature to the temperature of the meat that you're trying to achieve. So I will cook it, targeting, medium rare. But then from there, I can leave it on the fire, and I can get to a medium well and a well done place and not ruin the steak. Arguably, that steak well done is better than any steak at a restaurant that you'll find medium or medium rare. So it is delicious. But it's ruined me a bit.
Yeah.
Can't go to regular restaurants and have a steak and enjoy it. I go to restaurants and I'm like, oh man,
Critiquing the meat.
yeah, it's like it sucks. It's not fun. You have to go to a place that really is gonna have the right steak. So when you find a place that's at a good value point that has a good steak, you really do appreciate it, right?
Yeah.
So you really, it's not about the dollar. It's just finding a good steak at the right value point, where you look for. So
Yeah. Makes sense, man. Steak is such a good part of life, man. I hate to have it spoiled for me.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, see,
yeah.
my mom's the other opposite end of the spectrum, man. She wants a piece of meat that has seen a picture of a hair dryer. That's how she wants it cooked.
Huh? Yeah.
That's it. I mean, if it's mooing when you poke it,
They project. It doesn't actually make the grill. It's just projected to the grill, right?
yeah,
It sees it, and then it's okay. That's it. I'm done, right? Yeah,
absolutely. Look, if, as I said, if somebody's running a hair dryer near where the steak is resting,
that's good enough.
that's
Yeah,
cooked enough. Yeah, she's that person. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's a little too
yeah,
residential.
no, it's a thing. I can't go there. So Jay, folks, if folks wanted to find you, where would they find you, Jay?
For the most part, you can find me in West Kendall, I would say, right? If you Google my name and you put Jay Perez and my company name, Americasa, you'll come to the company website. You can find me on Instagram at JLoans. So there I'm, pretty much, I'm not too crazy active on Instagram, but I'll hopefully this year, continue to create that content and start creating more content. I think I've been underneath the cave for the last, 6 months to a year, working on the plan. So, on LinkedIn as well, you can find me on LinkedIn. So pretty much, yeah, I'm pretty easy to reach. I'm not that hard. I don't try to hide per se, might not see me in the forefront, but I don't hide from anyone.
Good stuff. Jay, thanks for being on, buddy. And thanks
Well,
for your time, man.
and thank you, Josh. Take care, bud.